Welcome back to the newsroom. In today's edition of Focus, we're looking at how new technology is changing the face of America's war on terror. We're heading to Pakistan, where attacks by unmanned U.S. aircraft, so-called drones, have increased dramatically since Barack Obama came into office. Last year, it's believed there were between 45 and 53 drone attacks on militant targets near the border with Afghanistan. And so far this year, there are reports of around a dozen already. For the United States, it's a way to fight the Taliban without a major incursion and without risking the loss of American lives. But in Pakistan, the attacks are hugely unpopular, and the Pakistani government often comes out to criticize them in public. But behind closed doors is a different story. As this report shows, Pakistani security agencies often help with the location of the targets.
It's a new kind of warfare. No ground troops and no pilots in the air. This is the drone war. Zero risk of American deaths, but devastating to its enemies.
A group of men came to ask us for shelter for the night. I greeted them. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and there were about 30 of them in the courtyard. Then all of a sudden, from the sky, a missile fell on us. Many men were killed. Some had limbs torn to shreds. Families were destroyed because of this. Why do they do this?
A fragment of U.S. Hellfire missile. This is the weapon that destroyed the house of Muhammad Halim, fired into the night by a U.S. drone. For America, there's no question of putting troops on Pakistani soil. It's diplomatically impossible and militarily too dangerous. So Washington is leading the fight against the Pakistani Taliban through unmanned aircrafts. From 12,000 kilometers away in the United States, the pilot sits in front of a computer screen and launches the UAV Predator attacks. Syed Bakir and Nahim Khan have each served 15 years in the Pakistani Special Forces, and for them, the technology is not enough.
The human intelligence is of the paramount importance to carry out a successful strikes against the militant by drones. So you have to eliminate a target with the help of a ground party in shape of a human being on some devices which are available now.
The tracer, a tiny GPS chip no bigger than this one used in a cell phone, is enough to paint the target.
It is placed on the target so the missile can be home on this chip.
And they are paid agent, locals of that area, who are well familiar with the movements of the militants, who are paid by the U.S. forces or U.S. intelligence.
According to Washington, the U.S. Air Force drones have eliminated more than 20 high-ranking Islamist leaders since 2001. But these attacks fuel the anger of local people, who say hundreds of civilians have been killed in drone strikes.
Our government should change the policy, because this policy is not against Taliban. This policy is against Pathan and against innocent Muslims.
Officially, the Pakistani authorities do not cooperate with the Americans. Islamabad even publicly denounces them as a violation of its sovereignty.
We are capable of doing things ourselves. So it is not comprehensible as to why Pakistan should allow such actions by any country. Would others allow us to carry out any kinds of attacks in other countries? I mean, this is not how interstate relations work.
That's the official line, intended to preserve Pakistani public opinion. But in reality, Islamabad is militarily incapable of hitting insurgents as effectively as the U.S. drones.
For more now on these drone attacks, we turn to Alain Lamballe, a security consultant and a former French military attaché to Pakistan and India. Also with us from Islamabad, we've got our correspondent Stefan Kloss. If we start with you, though, Alain, I know that you've studied this topic a lot, and you've also written this recent report on these drone attacks. From your perspective, do they work? I mean, are they getting the job done, these drone attacks?
Yes, there is no doubt. I mean, the drones work. I mean, they get intelligence from the air. But as it has been said, we need, however, some human being on the ground to get real information, because from the drone you cannot get everything. So the drones are necessary, very useful for reconnaissance, for observation, and of course they are used also to attack, because they have missiles which are delivered by the same drones. So are definitely efficient from the military point of view. But politically, that's another thing that has been mentioned.
What about the civilian casualties and so-called collateral damage? Because the risk of collateral damage, they don't decrease just because you use a drone, do they?
Yes, of course, there are many civilians who are killed, and that's a real problem for the Americans and for the Pakistani and for everybody. Because when you kill, a Taliban, you may kill civilians all around, and that's absolutely, very, very bad for the American and for the alliance, obviously. And that explains partially, the anti-American feelings which is prevailing in the tribal areas and in all Pakistan, actually.
Let's turn to Stefan Kloss, our correspondent in Islamabad. Stefan, Washington says more than 20 high-ranking militant leaders have been taken out by drone attacks since 2001. Are you getting reports that differ from that figure? How accurate do we think that figure is?
Well, there was, of course, never any official number that came out from the insurgents or from the Taliban here. They never confirmed that their field commanders or high-ranking officials were actually killed. But I think it is quite fair to assume that these drone strikes were successful. We do know from these areas and also from neighboring Afghanistan that the Taliban field commanders are very much afraid of these drone attacks because they are very precise, and that made them definitely made it more difficult for these field commanders to operate, because any time when they would switch on a mobile phone or a satellite phone, these drones would trace them down, these Taliban field commanders, and then trying to kill them.
Stefan, we've already touched upon it a little bit with Alain here in the studio, but what does the Pakistani public make of all of this? It's a very sensitive topic indeed, I take it.
Oh, very much indeed. We remember these drone strikes started when still President Musharraf was here in power. And at that time, there were big manifestations, demonstrations, and it was a big topic in the newspapers and on TV. But I must say, over the last couple of months, this all has somehow subsided, really. You will only see sometimes in the newspapers that drone attacks happening and also on TV. But really, the big demonstrations on the street by political parties, but also by religious parties, they are not there anymore.
All right, Stefan, let me go back to Alain Lambal here in the studio. We've seen an increase in these drone attacks since Barack Obama came into office. Do you think that development will continue, that we will see even more in the months and years to come?
Yes, probably there will be even more in the months to come. And not only that, but the Americans apparently are ready to give some drones to the Pakistani military forces. And they want this, the military, of course, because they have in mind to increase their technologies themselves. But the Americans, of course, will not give the most modern drone. They will give some drones which are not very much up to date. But however, that may help the Americans. And that has got some political implications. Because if you give some technology, even if it is not the latest one, to the Pakistani, they may use it, say, the Indians, against India if there is a war. And there is a risk also that this technology which is given may go to the Taliban and maybe to China as well, because relations between Pakistan and China are very close, that is known. So there is a political danger, a military danger, to give too much technology to the military in Pakistan. But however, the Americans, they're obliged to give something.
A lot of difficult issues to weigh up. Thanks very much, Alain Lambal, a security consultant, speaking to us here at France 24 this morning. Thanks also to Stefan Kloss, who was with us there from Pakistan and the capital, Islamabad. With that, we're going to wrap up Focus for now here at France 24. Thanks very much for watching, and more news is coming your way, so do stay with us.
Join us in the French Alps for the World Transplant Games. Men and women from across the world have come together, showing us the full life that organ donation can give.
Don't miss Health today, 10:15 a.m. Paris time on France 24.